same time. So brilliant. So you should have had a little notification saying that this is recording. And welcome to this session on everyday mindfulness. And I will share my slides with you in a moment. What I wanted to do now, I know some of you have come to some of my workshops before. I'm not sure who here may have actually been to, I did another session at the yoga gathering earlier in the year. And in that, I talked about mindfulness as well. So I wanted to do something different, either for those of you who came to that one, or just for anyone who's here today. I wanted to make this session practical. You know, you're here at a Yin Yoga festival, so we want to do some Yin Yoga. So if you have, don't worry if you haven't, but if you have your yoga mat kind of available, then, or just some floor space, then I'm going to intersperse this workshop with some Yin Yoga moves in order to really try and put what we're learning, what I'm talking about, into practice. Because as far as I'm concerned, mindfulness concepts, all of those tools and techniques that we're told are useful in life, like breathing techniques, grounding techniques, all of those kind of things, as far as I'm concerned, they're completely pointless if we don't actually know how to use them. I work, as well as a yoga instructor, I work as a children's therapist. And I often talk to young people about things that they can do to help ground themselves and to be more mindful and more present. And they will often say to me, it's mainly teenagers I work with, and they'll often say to me, oh yeah, I've tried that. I was told to do breathing techniques, or I was told to do some sensory grounding and it didn't work. And I'll say to them, did anyone tell you what was supposed to happen? And they're like, no, they just told me to do it. And I'm like, well, of course it didn't work, because you didn't know what was supposed to happen. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at some of the ways that we can be more mindful in everyday life, and also try them out so we can actually feel and experience what's supposed to happen. Supposed to. Nothing's supposed to happen, which we're going to see in a moment. That's the whole point. Okay, so I will share my screen. If you haven't already, Athena may have, but otherwise do pin my screen, and I will just get my slides up. Apologies, you're going to have a couple of seconds of me squinting at my computer. Okay. Again, I haven't mastered the art of sharing my Zoom screen whilst looking like I'm still there, but I spend the whole time kind of squinting and scrunching my nose at the computer. Okie dokie. So yeah, let's get started. I have also, in my many different guises, worked as a university lecturer. And what I would always say to students when I was lecturing them is, do what is right for you. If you want to, obviously this session's being recorded. If you want to make notes, great, make notes if that's useful for you. But equally, I would encourage you just to sort of go with it. Go where this wave, this river takes you. And just trust that whatever is useful, whatever you need to know, will kind of sink in. And if it's not, then that's okay as well. And I will put my email address up at the end so that people can email me. Let me know if you'd like the slides at all, because I'm always happy to share them as well. Okay, so welcome, AKA, who am I and what are you all doing here? What gives me the right to sit here and lecture you all on mindfulness? Particularly because I think it's really important in life to be real, to be honest with people, because mindfulness has can have real notes of sort of, only people who are really devout, who are really Zen, who are always present and just kind of drift through life feeling chill. Only those people can do mindfulness. While I was waiting for you all to arrive, I was not sitting being mindful. I was on my phone creating an avatar of myself on WhatsApp. So that is why I'm here. That is why I'm doing this session, because I struggle to be mindful. I struggle to sort of bring the concepts of meditation into everyday life. And so I understand how it is. I also have a long background of working in mental health. So I've done everything from working in inpatient acute psychiatric settings and crisis teams, where I live in Bristol in the UK. And I've also spent many years working in children and young people's mental health. And I kind of came into teaching yoga, particularly yin yoga, because I see the positive impact it can have on people's well-being. I imagine that's why a lot of you came to it as well. And I also see, and there's, you know, a lot of research now, as I'm sure lots of you are aware, into the really powerful impacts and links between sort of movement, between physical work, moving the body, stretching and strengthening the body, and our kind of mental well-being, our mind. So that's why I'm here, hopefully to kind of bring some of that background experience into what we're talking about today. Okay. So what can we do to be more mindful? What I wanted to share with you today is what I feel are the kind of four steps of mindfulness. I wanted to break it down, keep it simple, and give you something that you can take away. And I wanted to start off by just bringing this into the room. So hopefully I've already illustrated this a bit, but what I really want you to do before we go any further is get rid of the idea that it's unenjoyable, that it's difficult, that it's hard work, that, you know, it takes a long time and a lot of practice. It's a lifelong practice, but I was listening to an Alan Watts talk a little while ago, and he was talking about this very idea and how we'll often say to people, you know, mindfulness and meditation, oh, it's really hard, it takes a lot of practice, you know, you can only really get there if you really commit to it and graft for years and years. And then he gives the example of if you gave someone a book, if you said to them, this book will change your life. It's brilliant. I loved it. It has absolutely turned me into the person that I am today, which is so much better than I used to be. I'm going to give it to you to read, but oh my God, it's really hard. It's going to take you ages. You're probably not going to enjoy it. It's confusing. You won't understand it at points. You wouldn't read the book. And so it's only our mindset that tells us that we can't do mindfulness or meditation, that it's hard, that it's for other people. And actually, if we can just change that mindset and think, I've heard it's positive, I've heard it's beneficial, and I'm going to give it a go. And so mindfulness and meditation are, let me move my little, let me move this. Sorry, it's the pictures of all of you lot. So that I can see the words on here. Mindfulness and meditation aren't about crafting the perfect daily practice. They are about experimenting and trying things out. So the little cartoon, if you can see it, of the woman who's trying to meditate, that brilliantly sums me up a lot of the time when I'm practicing mindfulness and meditation. I'm kind of using the two terms sort of synonymously, although they're obviously very different, but they have a lot of they kind of come together, they unite as one and the same often. So yeah, that's me kind of sitting there thinking that I need to be this guy, that my mind needs to be clear, that I need to be free from distracting thoughts and just sitting on a beautiful plane of consciousness where I'm focusing on nothing but my breath. Whereas in reality, I'm constantly getting pulled away, hooked into my thoughts and difficult feelings and planning what I'm going to eat for dinner that evening. And it's in those moments that I can often feel, or my mind will tell me, oh, you can't do it. You've got it wrong. You've messed up. Whereas in actuality, for me, that is the point. The point of meditation, the point of mindfulness is just to keep coming back, is to notice when your mind has wandered, because it will. Another talk that I did at the yoga gathering was around how you know, as cave people, our minds were designed, they are hardwired to constantly be worrying, ruminating, dwelling on the past, thinking about the future, because that's how we survive. That's how any of us are here. Our brains are really finely tuned worrying machines. So if your mind is constantly wandering and drifting off and getting hooked into all sorts of thoughts and feelings, brilliant. That's exactly what it's meant to do, but it doesn't need to do that. And so this is the art of just catching it when it does, being kind to yourself and coming back to the moment. Okay, so what is mindfulness about? I wanted to start as I come into the first step on the road to mindfulness. I wanted to start with this brilliant quote, one of my favorite quotes by the philosopher Alan Watts, who I've already mentioned, does a lot of talking on these kinds of concepts. He was very much into particularly Zen Buddhism. And he says, the meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Okay, so the meaning of life is just to be alive. So if that's the case, there is nothing beyond just being alive that we need to achieve. Then how does that translate into, what mindfulness is, what the point is? And so for me, this is step one when it comes to really bringing the practice of mindfulness into everyday life. The first step, just do nothing. Don't do anything. There's nothing you need to do. There's nothing you need to change. And this is linked to the Chinese concept of Wu Wei. You may have come across this. If you haven't, brilliant. You're in for a treat. It's something that I would really recommend you explore. You look into the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, which Yin Yoga is very, very much sort of driven and inspired by. He really encapsulated this concept. And the idea, the word Wu Wei translates directly, I think it translates pretty much as without force, but often people will refer to it as meaning do nothing. And this doesn't mean, and I've had lots of conversations with people about this, because it doesn't mean just don't do anything. Obviously in life we've got responsibilities. We can't just sit around all day not doing anything. But I like to break the word nothing up into two. And I see Wu Wei, when it comes to being more mindful in everyday life, as just do no thing. There is no thing that you need to do in order to be more mindful and more present. But as the Alan Watts quote suggests, just be, just flow where the river takes you. Trust in the process and know that you don't need to read the special manual. You don't need to seek out the world's most brilliant Buddha or guru. You don't need to listen to the specific podcast or go to the workshop at the Yin Yoga Summit in order to learn how to be more mindful, but just do whatever it is that you're doing. Don't feel that you need to do any more. Okay, so I'm gonna get you to practice this concept now. Would help if I could speak, because this is a workshop. So I want it to be interactive. I want you to feel engaged. Just before we go any further as well, I always like people to say this when I'm in a workshop. I'm not going to be putting you into breakout rooms. I'm not going to be getting you to put your microphones or cameras on if you don't want to, or anything that I do in this workshop is just for you to sort of engage in at home if you want to. Okay, so the pink elephant. Some of you may have come across this. It was originally a psychological experiment which was conducted in the 1970s. And it was initially termed the white bear experiment, but a pink elephant sounds much more exciting. So what I want you to do, and I'm going to time it, for the next 30 seconds, my friends, you can think about anything you want. Let your mind wander. Think about anything you want to at all, but do not think about a pink elephant. Okay, you can think about anything at all, but do not think about a pink elephant. Okay, time starts now. Okay, so don't think about a pink elephant. Even if you're looking at the screen, do not think about a pink elephant. Think about another elephant, but don't think about a pink one. Halfway. Okay, make sure you're not thinking about that pink elephant. Keep going. 5 seconds to go. And stop. Okay. If you want to, I'd be interested to know actually, pop in the chat for me a number between 1 and 10. 1, in fact, 0 and 10. 0 is you nailed it. You did not think about a pink elephant once. And 10 is it is literally all you could think about. How do people find that? Feel free to let me know in the chat. So, okay, Derek struggled a little. Got some 4s and 3s, not bad. Oh, someone counted the number of times they thought about it. Brilliant. 5s, 3s. So, okay, you did pretty well. I'm going to say the 12. Okay, I'm going to say the average there seems to be about 5. So you were sort of halfway to thinking about the pink elephant all the time. Okay, so what I want you to do now is I want you, this is the second time we're going to do it, second and final time. I want you to, for the next 30 seconds, think about anything you want. There are no rules. There's no right or wrong. If you think about a pink elephant, that's fine. If you think about what you're going to have for dinner tonight, that's okay as well. Okay, off you go. Just let your thoughts do their thing. There's no right or wrong. Everything is allowed. Okay, about halfway. Just let your thoughts flow. Again, no right or wrong. You can think about anything. In 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So I want you to think, obviously we can't put a number on it because there wasn't anything to quantify that time, but just have a think for a moment. How did you find it that time? Sort of, maybe that a pink elephant still was plaguing your thoughts. But the reason that that experiment is so powerful, and it's often used, with people therapeutically in different behavioral therapies, people who really struggle with intrusive and obsessive or compulsive thoughts, is because it, for me, illustrates brilliantly what we're talking about in terms of Wu Wei and mindfulness. If you tell yourself, oh, there's something that I should or I shouldn't be doing, or there's a right or a wrong way to do this, then most probably what your brain's going to do, your mind's going to do, is it's going to fixate on that thing. So when you're sitting trying to be mindful or be meditative or be present in the moment, if you're thinking to yourself, I mustn't get hooked into my thoughts, I mustn't think about anything, I must be present, then all you're thinking about is sort of not wanting to think about your thoughts, and most probably that's where your mind will go. Whereas when it comes to Wu Wei, to doing no thing, just allowing what is, and we're going to look at this a bit more as we go along, you can see how actually this pink elephant experiment illustrates that you might still get hooked into your thoughts, but that's okay, because you're not trying not to. And most probably what you'll find over time is that you start to get much better when you allow all thoughts at being more present in the moment, because there's nothing that isn't allowed. So there's nowhere that your mind sneakily wants to go. Okay, so let's really put this into practice. Let's have a little go at just practicing the mindfulness technique of doing nothing. So if you have a yoga mat available, I want you to find it now. And we're going to come into, I'll talk you into our first pose of the session, which is twisted roots. If you don't have a yoga mat, then that's fine if you don't have one available or any floor space. Okay, so for twisted roots, what I want you to do, this is my favorite yin yoga pose, by the way, love it. I basically do this every time I do yin yoga, but you may not agree, which is okay. We're all different. Okay, so what I want you to do is just lie on your back, bending your knees, planting your feet softly on the mat, bringing your arms out wide, And when you're ready, and I'm going to give you a load of options, so don't worry if this first one doesn't work for you. When you're ready, you're just going to cross right leg over left. Imagine that you're like reclining on the grass on a sunny summer's day. And then just gently engaging through the core, drifting your knees down to the left-hand side. Taking a deep breath, just landing here. And if this feels too intense, particularly in your hips or your legs, then you can just uncross your legs and allow the right to left rest softly on the left. If it feels good and you want to go a little bit deeper, then you can draw your knees up to your chest. And you can also turn your head to face in the opposite direction to your knees, just to deepen the twist further up your back. And once you find your first side of twisted roots, the version that works for you, just maybe close down the eyes. And if you're not doing the pose, if you haven't got the space or the yoga mat, not that a yoga mat is obligatory, then you might want to just close down your eyes anyway. Take a few deep breaths. And I want you just to come back to that idea of doing nothing. In Chinese philosophy, specifically Taoism, there is a lot of focus on water, and the idea of flowing like a river. So I want you just to flow wherever this pose takes you. It might be that thoughts or difficult feelings hook you in. Again, that's what our mind is kind of designed to do. But again, I want you to see if you can not fight or struggle those thoughts, but just notice. And then maybe use your breath and the sensation of your body on the mat just as your anchor to ground you back into the present moment, whilst knowing that everything is allowed. There is nothing that you need to do beyond just being here and bringing whatever you're feeling, whatever's going on for you today. And you've got about 1.5 minutes left. So again, rather than berating yourself for having done the wrong thing, harnessing this concept of Wu Wei, if you do find that your mind starts to wander, great. Congratulate yourself for noticing. And if you feel able, just choose to come back to the moment. Okay, taking 3 last deep breaths here. Again, there is no thing that you need to do in order to breathe correctly, but just breathe in whatever way feels right for you at this moment in time. And when you're ready, just slowly unraveling easing your knees back up to the center. Uncrossing right leg from left, and just take a moment. Just take a moment in neutral. You can keep your knees bent or you can straighten your legs. And just experience for a short while how it feels to just let go, to flow with the river, to not be bound up in this notion we have as a culture that we always need to be doing, that we need to be busy, that we need to be pushing against our human instinct, which is just to be. Just see how it feels for this moment, just to be in the moment, doing no thing. Okay, when you're ready, bending the knees again. We'll do the other side. So this time crossing left leg over right. And just slowly drifting those knees down to the right-hand side. And you might find that your left shoulder comes up off the mat. You might find that your knees don't quite reach the ground. You might find that you want to uncross your legs because it's a bit too intense on this side. Congratulations, you're human. And the beautiful thing about yin yoga, if it hasn't been hammered home to you enough yet, is that there is no right or wrong. There is just following your instincts, flowing with the river, doing no thing but just engaging with the pose on your terms, in the way that's right for your body at this moment in time. Okay. And again, when it comes to your breath, as you're lying here in this second side of twisted roots, can you embody the concept of Wu Wei? And just do nothing with it, but just let it do its own thing. Just flow where the river's taking you. Trust in your instincts. And let all of your tension just melt away into the mat. Doing nothing more than just being you in this moment. Okay, about 20 seconds or so more. Taking a couple of deep breaths, just invigorating the body a little. And when you're ready, just slowly easing your knees back to the center. Taking a moment or two here before slowly, in your own time, no rush, just finding your way back up to seated. Ready for the next step to mindfulness. So no rush, take your time. If you want to stay on your mat, then that is okay as well. The meaning of life is just to be alive. So be alive in this moment in whatever way serves you the most. Okay. So, step 2. I find this quote. In fact, it's a quote taken from a piece of scientific research done by Killingsworth and Gilbert. And the quote, I'll read the quote and then I'll tell you about the research. So step 2 is to be present. Again, something we always hear when it comes to mindfulness, to be present. And the piece of research has this quote in it: a human mind is a wandering mind, and a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. So Killingsworth and Gilbert did a large study. They had a lot of participants, and they did a large study into the impacts of not only mindfulness and being more in the present moment, but also the impacts of not being present, of our minds wandering and being in the past or the future. And what they did was they got participants to have their phones on them all the time. And at random moments throughout the day, they would be notified, and they had to log in quickly to the app and just note whether they were present or whether their mind had been wandering when they when the message came through. And then they had to sort of rate themselves. I'm not sure how, whether it was a scale or something, but they had to rate sort of how content they were, how happy they were, or how unhappy they were. And generally what they found, as you can see from the quote, quite unanimously, is that when our mind is wandering, when we are not present, even, and this is the really interesting part, this is a kicker, even when we're thinking about stuff that is nice, that is pleasant, that is happy, if we're not in the present moment and our mind is wandering, we're not happy, or certainly not as happy as we are when we're able to be in the present. And there were very few activities that these participants engaged in where they were able to really be fully present in the moment. Okay. So being present. What I wanted to explore for this step into mindfulness is 2 things. And then we will do another yin pose to put it into practice. So on the left side of the screen, you should be able to see this luminescent square. And this stands for square breathing, which I'm going to talk you through in a moment. Some of you will have probably come across it, sometimes known as 4x4 breathing or box breathing. But before I do, as I said at the start of this session, for those of you who are here, I really struggle with how breathing techniques are, not how they're taught, but how they're often presented when it comes to mindfulness, because we're often told, and I have been as well, and I've probably been responsible for saying it to people as well, breathing's really good, breathing's a great way of being more mindful. But we don't really explain why or what you're supposed to achieve from that breathing technique. And again, some of you who've been to other sessions I've done in the past will know that I use something called acceptance and commitment therapy a lot. And this is all about how we generally as humans try and get rid of difficult feelings. Don't like them, don't want them, don't need them, don't want to feel them. Whereas all feelings are useful, all feelings are important. They all communicate something to us, and they're all a part of life. And so what people will generally think the point is when it comes to mindfulness, and particularly breathing techniques, people will often be under the misguided assumption that the point is to get rid of the difficult feelings, to feel good, to feel happy, to feel calm. Whereas I explain mindfulness techniques like dropping an anchor. And if a boat was coming into a harbour and it heard over its radio that there was a big storm coming, its main priority would be to get into the harbour as quickly as possible, to moor itself up, to drop an anchor, and to ride out the storm. Now, the anchor doesn't make the storm go away any quicker. It doesn't make the storm any less powerful or ferocious, but it makes the boat a lot stronger, a lot more grounded, and able to weather the storm and come out the other side. And it's exactly the same with mindfulness techniques. For me, the point is not to make the emotional storms, the storms that we can experience in our minds, go any quicker or to decrease in severity. If anything, it's about feeling them, allowing them, embracing them, letting them in. But what mindfulness techniques and breathing in particular are about, they're about our way of dropping an anchor and helping us just to feel a little bit more grounded, a bit more stable, and able to weather the emotional storm until it passes. So with that in mind, I always choose square breathing as the technique that I teach people, because this one, a lot of other ones do, but this one I know has quite a strong evidence base behind it, and its power to help people to feel grounded and more mindful in the present moment. And they use this in the US Navy SEALs. They use square breathing to help them to be more grounded, to be more present and focused just before they go into combat, into really heightened situations. And again, it doesn't make the situation any better, but it helps the person to feel better able to cope. So if you would like to, even if you've done it before, we're going to practice now. And the reason that I like square breathing as well is because if you are indoors, there will always be a square or a rectangle shape available, whether it's a window, a door, a wall, a computer screen. There is always a square shape available indoors. I've yet to find an indoor space that doesn't have a square that you can look at. If you do have one, or if you're doing it outdoors, or even if you want a little sensory element, you can also just draw a square on your hand as you're doing it. That's what I'm going to do whilst I talk you through. So in a moment, I'm going to talk you through it, but I'll tell you what we're going to do before I do that. And I'm going to ask you to just kind of breathe all the air out of your lungs. Then we are going to breathe in through the nose as we trace up, either with our eye or with our finger, as we trace up one side of this square shape. And I'm going to count for 4. We're then going to trace along the top of the square as we hold our breath at the top for 4 seconds. We're then going to trace down the other side of the square as we breathe out of the mouth for 4 seconds. And we are going to hold our breath at the bottom as we count to 4. And again, the reason that breathing techniques are really useful is quite simply, and I'm not really hot up on the neuroscience of it, but essentially they slow down the rate of our lungs, which in turn slows down the pace that our heart is beating, which in turn physiologically communicates to our mind, you're okay, you've got this. You can calm down. And so it creates a feedback loop between body and brain that can be really powerful. Okay, so when you're ready, just closing your eyes or focusing on a square shape in front of you, breathing out. And then we're going to breathe in through the nose as we trace up one side. 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath at the top. 2, 3, 4. Breathing out through the mouth. 2, 3, 4, and hold at the bottom. 2, 3, 4. Breathing in as you trace up one side of the square. 3, 4. Hold at the top. 2, 3, 4. Trace down the other side as you breathe out. 3, 4, and hold at the bottom. 2, 3, 4. Let's do a couple more rounds, but do them in your time, in your own time, in your own way. So holding at the top, breathing out, and holding at the bottom. And just do one more round at a pace that works for you. Just breathing, holding, breathing, holding. Okay. Just take a moment, allow your breath to just find its own natural rhythm again. And just notice how you feel. And again, the invitation, or it's often felt that the invitation when we do these techniques, and then someone says to us, "Oh, how did you find that?" is that we're meant to say, "Oh, I feel much calmer." You might not feel any different, but just notice if there's any kind of shift or change in your physiology. When I do this technique with young people, they'll often say to me, I feel a bit stupid actually. And I'm like, brilliant, that's fine. Let's pay attention to that feeling. Okay, the second technique, and then we will put these into practice with our next yin yoga pose, is the idea of clock time versus psychological time. So when it comes to being present in the moment as much as possible, there's this idea which was certainly presented to me. I don't know if he got it from somewhere else, but by Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle, I mean, there aren't, I don't imagine there's many, if any others, but Eckhart Tolle of the Power of Now fame, you may have come across or read the book, The Power of Now. It's a brilliant exploration of mindfulness, of being present, of unhooking from our thoughts, our feelings, dwelling in the past and the future. So I would really recommend it if you haven't read it. And he presents us with this idea of clock time versus psychological time. And it's a way of helping people who will argue, but you need to sometimes be in the future because, you know, you've got to plan where you're going to go on holiday later in the year. Or sometimes you need to be in the past because, you know, if you did something wrong or you know, you got some negative feedback at work, well, you need to go into the past to sort of think about it and reflect on that experience. Absolutely. It's really valuable to sometimes choose to spend time in the past or in the future reflecting and planning. And this is where clock time comes in. So what Eckhart Tolle will say is clock time is a really specific amount of ring-fence time where you do what you need to do to either reflect on something that's happened in the past that you want to learn from, or you spend some time planning. So I will often at the end of the day look at my calendar on my phone for the next day and just sort of see, okay, what am I doing? Do I need to take lunch with me? Am I going to be out and about? Do I need to prepare anything? Put my bag out for the next morning? And then stop. And this is the hard bit as humans, but that's when he says stop, because as soon as we have done the planning or the reflecting that we need to do, we will then very easily drift into psychological time. And psychological time is the problematic time. That's when we start thinking, oh, but, well, this is an insight into my mind. Well, if I take soup for lunch, then I won't have any for Tuesday. And so maybe I should save it and get a sandwich instead. I don't know if there's going to be any shops where I'm going, and I don't know. I don't know if I'll want a sandwich tomorrow. And well, what clothes should I wear? Because, you know, I'm going to be doing a workout in the evening. So maybe I'll need to bring psychological time. Doesn't matter. Don't need to dwell on these things. That's us getting hooked into hypothetical scenarios that are monsters that we're fighting that don't exist and may never exist. Clock time is where we plan or reflect, and then we stop and we come back to the present moment. So it can be just useful, and it's very hard not to do it. And because again, as humans, our brains are wired to get hooked into the past and the future. But if nothing more, just notice, you know, when your mind is drifting, just think to yourself, is this clock time or is this psychological time? If it's clock time, cool, carry on, but stop as soon as you've done your planning or reflecting. And if it's psychological time, see if you can, again, with kindness, with compassion, congratulate yourself for noticing. And then maybe do a bit of square breathing or use your breath or your body to bring you back into the present moment. Okay. So let's practice this now. The art of being present. With our second yin yoga pose. I should have said at the start, I actively teach yin yoga propless. No props. I do a lot of work with students at a university where they don't have any props for me to use. So I have mastered the art of doing yin yoga without anything, but just your good self and a yoga mat. So you don't need any props at all, but if you have them and want them, then do feel free to use them as well. So we're going to come into butterfly pose. So just finding a comfortable place to sit and just gently bringing the soles of your feet together and dropping your knees out wide. If you do have any knee issues and you find it quite difficult just to allow them to hang here, then you may want to get some bolsters or pillows or blankets or whatever you have just to sort of wedge under your knees to keep them in place. But if not, just allowing the knees to fall to the side. Take a moment just to sit tall. Just feel how it is to sit tall, to sit proud of the magnificent human being that you are, to feel present in this moment in time. And then when you're ready, we're just going to hinge forwards at the hips, just gently folding forwards as far as you comfortably can before your back starts to curve. And this is the point where you stop hinging at the hips and you just allow yourself to kind of melt forwards. Allow your head to hang. So you might want to shake and nod your head yes and no a couple of times. Just let it hang down. Just allow your hands to flop wherever they naturally do, by your sides, in your lap, on your feet. And just relaxing here. And our breath is an incredibly powerful tool to anchor us in the present moment. So while you're here in butterfly pose, closing down the eyes if it feels comfortable to do so, I want you just to come back to that idea of dropping an anchor, of grounding yourself in the here and now. And it doesn't make mindfulness particularly any easier, but it just helps you to have something to focus on, to allow you to be more present. And when you do notice yourself getting hooked into thoughts, feelings, memories, planning, exciting ideas of what you're going to do at the weekend, again, congratulate yourself for noticing. And then see if you can use your breath to bring you back to the present moment. See if you can be present. Even just for one round of breath, one inhalation, one exhalation, before your mind may well start wandering again. And then when you notice, just use the breath to anchor you back in the moment again. Okay, I've got about a minute to go. Always making any little tweaks, any fidgets, any movements you need to make the pose work for you, knowing you can always come out of it if you need to, but also as long as there's no pain, no sharpness, no tingling sensation or anything that really doesn't feel good for your body, then can you just lean into the discomfort and notice how it feels just to be present with whatever your experience is of being alive right now. Okay, taking 3 deep breaths here, really breathing into the back body. Just waking yourself up out of the pose. And with absolutely no rush, moving as slowly and as mindfully as you can, staying present if possible. Although notice what happens to your mind when you start to move. it often starts whirring up and rushing again. Just taking perhaps your head in your hands and gently easing your head back up to rest comfortably on top of your shoulders. And in your own time, just flickering open the eyes and coming back into the moment. And finding your seat for step 3 to being more mindful. Okay. But no rush at all. Take your time. Okay. So step 3 is to be still. And this is the one where I start to panic, and I'm like, oh God, I'll never be able to do it. I am a girl who's not designed to be still. In fact, that's why I came to Yin Yoga. Many years ago, for anyone who's interested, I had a conversation with someone. I had never met her before. I've never seen her since. And I was saying to her how, oh, I'm one of those people who always moves around. I'm always on the go. I like to do really active and high energy stuff. And she said, oh, you need to try Yin Yoga. And I was like, brilliant. You know, what is it? And she said, oh, you know, you just lie there. You're very still. Very little sort of fast movement. And I was like, oh God, no, I don't do that kind of thing. I can't be still. And she was like, that is why you need to do it. And I did it, and I've never looked back. So being still can be quite a difficult command for people to take on board. And that is why the way this step towards being more mindful was taught to me is see it absolutely not as a command. This isn't be still, you must be still, you must not move. But it's more an invitation. It's more a kind of vibe, be still. And there's a few different concepts that I like to use to explain this to people when it comes to mindfulness, both of them involving water. So the first one is, I'll often say to people, you know, imagine that you are like the ocean, and others of you may have heard this analogy before, like you are the ocean and your thoughts, your feelings, they're like waves. And the waves are not the ocean, they're just a part of it. And what we know with waves is they rise and they fall and they go back into the water. And it's the same with our thoughts and feelings. Rather than getting sort of battered around by them, or, you know, jumping on our surfboard or jet ski and kind of following them as they go their course across the ocean, just allow the wave, the feeling, the thought to rise, to occur, to be present, and to just fall again, and allow it to drift off rather than getting hooked into it. And being still is about reminding yourself that you are the ocean. Just watch your thoughts and feelings, but don't let them drag you off into the turbulent waters. And the other way that I really like to illustrate this idea of being still is the idea that what's the best way of explaining it? So the idea that, or apparently the fact is, and I've never tried this out and I don't plan to, but when you are caught in a current, when you are in the ocean or a river or lake and you are caught in a current, the temptation is to kind of flail, to move, to be really active and to try and swim out of the current. And usually what that does is it expends more energy than we need to. It tires us out, and that can often be what causes people to drown or to get into even more trouble. And apparently the best way of dealing with a current is just to lie back, to let the current take you wherever it does. And usually, and there's brilliant sort of aerial view pictures of currents where you can see them. There's either horseshoe ones that you kind of just drift out, and then they bring you back in pretty much to where you started. Or there's currents that kind of drift outwards into the ocean or further into the lake or the river, and then they stop and you can step out and you can go about your day. And so in being still, it's about just choosing not to get hooked up in the current, not to try and fight whatever's happening to you, or to fight the fact that your thoughts are dragging you off. But like with the pink elephant experiment, just to be still, just to watch them. I'm noticing I'm having the thought that I'm going to meet up with some friends later and I'm not sure what to wear. Cool. I'm going to come back to the present moment, just watch them, just notice them, just be still, rather than railing against them or getting hooked up in them. And the other way that I like thinking of this, and this is a little thought experiment that you can do now, is to imagine, particularly when it comes to difficult thoughts and feelings, I want you to think of a feeling. You don't need to share it, but just take a moment to think of a feeling or a thought that you really struggle with. Okay. So for me, I used to really struggle with anger, feeling of anger. Don't like it, don't want it. Whenever I would feel anger coming up, it's like, oh, don't want this, need to get rid of it. How can I make this feeling go away? It's often the same with sort of sadness or depression, low moods, that kind of thing. So just think of a feeling or a thought that you really don't like, that you really struggle with. Okay, and I want you now to imagine that this thought or this difficult feeling is a monster. And the monster is standing opposite you. And in the middle, in between you and the monster, this difficult thought or feeling, there's a bottomless pit. And you are in a tug of war with the monster. When we are getting hooked into our thoughts and feelings, when we're not present in the moment, we are in a tug of war with these difficult feelings. And we're pulling because we're struggling. We don't want them to be there. We want to get rid of them in the bottomless pit. And the more we pull them, the more they pull us, and we get closer to the pit. And so we pull back and we struggle with them. And take a moment and have a think. In that situation, what is the best course of action? Okay. And if you answered, or if you thought to drop the rope, just to let go of the rope, then correct. That is the best thing that you can do in that situation. When you are finding that you're not present, that you're not being still, that you're struggling with your thoughts and feelings, that you're trying to be more mindful and getting annoyed that you keep getting hooked into thoughts or feelings or whatever they are, the best thing to do is just to stop, just to let go. Let the difficult thought be there. Let the feeling be there. Let your mind be racing. Some days I wake up and I'm like, oh, my mind is really high energy today. My thoughts are really racing and they're all over the place. And the most powerful mindfulness practice that I've discovered is being like, cool, okay, I'm just going to let that happen and I'm going to see how I get on. And not fight it, don't struggle with it. Be still. So we're going to practice this again. There's a little monster. I forgot I had that slide. Oh, spoiler alert. I've shown you all of the slides. You can go home now. There's the little monster. Just wanted to show you him because I thought it was quite cute. Actually, I wouldn't mind him. Wouldn't struggle with him. Be like a little pet that I'd keep in my house. But I digress. Let's come to our third pose, which is open wing. So I'll talk you through this a little bit, as with all of them, but I'll cue you into this one in particular. If you are familiar with open wing, then do feel free to find your own way into it. And it's a double-sided pose. So we're going to start off just lying on our front, whatever way feels comfortable. And then you are going to take, let's start with our right arm. So you're going to take your right arm. This is your wing. This is your open wing. And you're going to just reach it out nice and wide, perhaps keeping a slight micro bend in the elbow, particularly if you have any kind of hypermobile joints or injuries with locking out of your joints, then do be really careful. Also, if you have any kind of long-standing shoulder injuries or have had a dislocation in the past, then you may want to sit this one out. Otherwise, bringing that right arm out wide, and then with your free left hand, you're just going to place that hand on the mat and just slowly push yourself over so that you roll out onto your right arm. I'll show you the other way as well so that you can see from this angle if you want to look. I find you'll find your own level of comfort with this one. I find that bending my lower leg, so for your right leg, bending my lower leg at the knee just helps to sort of wedge me in place a bit more. It kind of creates a counterbalance. And bring your head to rest softly on the mat. You might want to place a pillow under it. You might want to make a pillow with the palm of your left hand. And if you want to come out of the pose at all, then you can just ease out of it. If you want to go a little bit deeper, then you can bring your left arm, raise it overhead, turn it so that your palm is facing away from you, and just drop it again like a little weight, like an anchor. Just drop it down to rest by your lower back. Closing down the eyes, softening through the body. And just sinking into this pose. As we come back to point 3, step 3 of being more mindful, be still. And 2 questions that I was taught that can be really useful to ask yourself. If you are struggling with a difficult thought or feeling, or when you're trying to be more mindful, more present, and you're really finding that you're not, is to just ask yourself, first of all, can I allow this feeling, or can I allow this thought to be here? And it might be that sometimes the answer is no, and that you need to spend a bit of clock time actually sitting down and thinking a bit about it. But if the answer is yes, so can I allow this thought or this feeling to be here? Then you ask yourself the next question, which is, can I let go of the outcome? Can I let go of the outcome? Because as we all know, as we are born knowing, but we lose that knowledge as we get older, is that no amount of anxiety or worry or thinking or ruminating, no amount of anxiety will change anything that's going to happen. So can you drop the struggle? Can you drop the tug of war? And just be still. Allow your thoughts and feelings to rise like the waves that they are, and to crash and to pass, whilst you maintain your position as the ocean that this occurs on. Okay, my friends, and when you're ready, we're going to ease out of this side of the pose. So just taking your left hand, again, placing it on the mat, and just gently, really slowly, just easing your way back onto your front and taking a moment in neutral. You might want to rest up on your forearms. You might want to make a pillow with the backs of your hands, or just bring your arms to your sides. Follow your instincts. Flow with the river. Do no thing. Be still and be present, and just do what feels right for you. And when you're ready, just bringing your left arm, your left wing out to the side. Again, slight micro bend in the elbow. And using your right hand as your lever, just pushing yourself back onto that left arm. And just take a moment. Be really present. Notice how it feels. Whether you want to go deeper by bringing your hand up and down to rest by your lower back, or whether you just want to keep it where it is and chill out here. Closing down the eyes. And without it being a command or a stick to beat yourself with, can you be still? And if any waves of thought or feeling rise, just notice. Allow them to be there, to reach their peak, and then just watch them as they drift off. As you maintain your position as the ocean. Taking a few last breaths here. Before using your right hand as your lever, just to allow you to gently roll your way back onto your front. Taking your time, moving slowly, being present, being mindful. And we're going to come from here into our final pose. So I'm not going to ask you to sit up again. And from our final pose, we're going to come into our yoga nidra. So if you do want to make yourself super cozy, if you want to make a little yoga nidra nest, then do grab anything that you might want now, like blankets, pillows, jumpers, all of the above. So grab anything that you might want for the yoga nidra. But before we come into that, we're going to come into our final pose, which is heart bench. And as I said, I pride myself on teaching yin yoga with no props. I want it to be accessible to anyone, anywhere. So for heart bench, often you'll use a block or a bolster. But what we're going to do is simply, so the easiest way of coming into heart bench is lying on your back. And then just almost squeezing the shoulder blades together. So you create a little kind of arch shape in your lower back. Don't go any further than feels comfortable, particularly if you have lower back issues. But just squeezing the shoulder blades together. Imagine that you're trying to squeeze like, I don't know, squeeze a pencil between your shoulder blades. Again, be mindful though, don't go any further than feels comfortable. You can also, if you want to go a little deeper, you can just bring your hands and place them under your butt. Just to really puff out your chest. And you can even raise your chin up to the sky just to tilt the head back, rest the crown on the mat. And the aim of heart bench is simply just to raise the heart space, raise the chest a little bit higher than the rest of your body. Take a few breaths here. And as you do, closing the eyes, there's nothing else, I don't think, exciting to see on these PowerPoints. There's no more little monsters. I wanted to introduce the final step towards being more mindful, which is acceptance, developing acceptance. And the way that I often describe this to people is to, first of all, to think of the weather. Okay. So if you think of a type of weather that you don't particularly enjoy, so for me, it's kind of that, which we get a lot in the UK, it's that kind of really cold, drizzly rain, which makes certainly, not that I'm that vain, but it makes my hair really frizzy and it gets all your clothes wet and you feel cold and you can't dry off. I don't like that weather. Okay. But then ask yourself, when we are experiencing a type of weather that we don't like, is it possible, however much we dislike it, to snap our fingers and make it go any quicker? It's not possible. We just accept that, okay, this is the weather. And, what we do know, what we can guarantee, and even children know, is that it won't last forever. Eventually, the weather will change. The sun will start shining. It will get warmer. Summer will come. Might snow. It might rain again sometime. But we know that the weather will A, always change, and B, that we can't make it pass any sooner. We just need to allow it to do its thing and trust that it will pass in its own time. And for me, this is the core to acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean putting up with difficult stuff that you have going on in your life. Acceptance doesn't mean, you need to just accept that this is your lot and you're screwed and you're never going to feel okay again. But acceptance means allowing whatever is there, whatever thoughts or feelings or frustrations are present, just to be present, just accept them as part of your experience, as waves in your ocean at that time. But like the weather, know that struggling with them, railing against them, won't make them pass any sooner. And what we do know is that they will, in their own time, pass, making way for another feeling. So just take a moment to watch your thoughts and feelings, practicing all of the techniques that we've learned in today's session. The art of Wu Wei, doing no thing in particular, but just allowing whatever's there to be there. Being present, not getting hooked into psychological time, not being dragged away by your thoughts and feelings, but when you notice them, just congratulating yourself for noticing and coming back to the present. Being still, just lying back and letting this river of thought and feeling of presence in the moment just take you wherever it takes you, dropping the struggle. And if you can allow whatever you're feeling to be there, then can you let go of the outcome? And the step of acceptance, knowing that we can't make our difficult thoughts and feelings pass any sooner, but in just accepting them and coming back to the present moment, trusting that they will come and go in their own time. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. It may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Okay, so when you're ready, just staying where you are, but just allowing your body to ease out of heart bench, just softening your back. Tucking your chin ever so slightly into the chest. Allowing your hands to fall by your sides. Legs out long, feet just softly falling to either side. Taking a couple of deep breaths here and just feeling the sensation of the air as it enters your nostrils. And the warmth as it leaves. Take a moment to just bring your awareness to any sensations that you're aware of in the environment, in the world around you, any sounds. The sensation of the air in the room against your skin, temperature, the play of light against your eyelids. And just taking a moment to notice what's going on in your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, and putting into practice everything that we've explored on this little journey through mindfulness, with no pressure to change anything, just accepting whatever's going on internally and externally right now. And just imagine now that the mat that you're lying on is a raft, and you are drifting gently down a beautiful, clear river. Just flowing where the current's taking you, with a sense of deep trust that wherever you end up is where you'll need to be. And just being present in the moment. I want you to bring your attention, bring your awareness to your right hand. Just bring your awareness to your right hand thumb, your right index finger, middle finger, ring finger and right little finger. Your right wrist, forearm, elbow, upper arm, and your right shoulder. Now just moving your awareness to sensations in your left hand. Your left thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, and your left little finger. Your left wrist, forearm, elbow, upper arm, and your left shoulder. Now becoming aware of sensations in your chest. Your rib cage, both left and right, and your stomach. Feel your stomach unraveling and softening as you just drift where this river's taking you. Staying present in the moment and allowing the waves that are your ocean to rise and fall while staying present with what is. Moving your awareness to your right hip, right thigh, right knee, calf, ankle, heel, and the sole of your right foot. Your right big toe, second toe, third toe, fourth toe, and your right little toe. Your left hip, left thigh, knee, calf, heel, and the sole of your left foot. Your left big toe, second toe, third toe, fourth toe, and your left little toe. Now moving your awareness to your lower back, your mid back, your upper back, and the whole length of your spine as you sink down into the ground beneath you and you just keep flowing where this river's taking you. The back of your neck, back of your head, crown of your head, now moving your awareness to your tongue, all the way from the tip to the root of your tongue. Your inner right cheek, your inner left cheek, your lower lip, upper lip, right cheekbone, left cheekbone, your nose, right ear, left ear, right eye and eyelid, left eye and eyelid, your right eyebrow, left eyebrow, and the central point between your two eyebrows. And staying here in this center point, just follow this feeling of drifting slowly down the river, trusting where it's taking you, harnessing the feeling of being present, of being alive, of doing nothing but just being you in this moment. And anytime you notice yourself going forwards, getting hooked into thoughts, feelings, worries, planning, memories, struggles, just ask yourself, can I allow this feeling to be here? And can I let go of the outcome and come back to the present moment? Okay. Just take a moment to focus on your breath now, just to take a few deeper breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. Maybe take a moment to wriggle your fingers and toes. And like water, just allow this small movement to ripple into some slightly bigger movements in your body. Maybe taking a stretch or tucking your knees into your chest. Watch what happens with your thoughts as you start moving. But if you can, watch what happens with a playful, childlike curiosity. And if you notice yourself getting swept up in the waves, see if you can come back to being the ocean and just allow the thoughts to rise and fall as you roll onto one side. Although if you want to, you can stay here a little longer. The session will end by itself. Otherwise, taking your time before you just gently ease yourself up to seated. Keeping hold of anything that's been useful from today's session, whilst just letting go, like water washing over you, anything that perhaps just didn't feel relevant to you. And when you're ready, wherever you've come to, we'll just finish off by taking 3 deep breaths. But before we do, perhaps just take a moment to set an intention for yourself. When it comes to being more present, more mindful in everyday life, in a way that is kind and compassionate towards the fact that you are simply a human, finding your way through this life, just being alive. Perhaps choose a word, a phrase, a short sentence that sums up your best hope for yourself when it comes to being a little bit more mindful in everyday life. And we'll finish by taking 3 deep breaths. And as you breathe in, just repeat that intention to yourself, locking it in place. And as you sigh out, just letting go of old habits, of old ways of being that no longer serve you. Breathing in and letting go. Final deep breath in through the nose. And letting go as you flicker your eyes open. And we are all done. Thank you so much wholeheartedly for joining me this evening. It has been an absolute delight to spend this time with all of you. Enjoy the rest of the Yin Yoga Summit. I'm going to definitely be coming to some things as well. So I'll sort of see you in spirit virtually, hopefully in some other sessions. I believe, do check the chat. I'm sure Athena and Cedric will put it in, but I believe that there will be, I think there's more things after this. So they will probably let you know when they are. And yeah, fill your boots, have a whole Friday evening of yoga or whatever time and day it is where you are. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I will put my email address in the chat in a moment. So if anyone does want slides or just wants to contact to chat more about mindfulness, then I'm always up for a chat, as you could probably tell. So yeah, thank you. Have a fabulous rest of the Yin Yoga Festival. And I look forward to seeing you virtually or in person sometime soon. Thank you. Yeah. Up next is Cedric in 15 minutes with Yin and the 5 yogic bodies, and it's in room 1. So if you want to come to that, you could probably stay logged in, but you will get let back in if you do leave. So yeah, 15-minute break and then back here, my friends. Have a good one. Thank you.